Hi guys, long time no see. I'm finally making another YouTube video after, I don't even know, like years of not making one. And today I'm going to talk about my experience working with JoyTalk, which is an assistant language teacher company in Japan. So I worked with JoyTalk for 1 year, one full year. I served my full contract, and I came in 2022, which is uh, right after the borders opened, after they closed for some time, not allowing any new visas to be processed. So I came as soon as the border opened, basically, like within a couple of days, I think, of the border being reopened. I arrived back in Japan. So basically, that timeline was I applied in January of 2022, and I was hired within a couple of weeks, and I didn't hear back from them for like 2 weeks after my interview, I think, something like that. And I wasn't really sure what to expect. There weren't really a lot of companies that were willing to interview overseas candidates at that time because of the borders being closed. So I was not really sure how it was going to go, but it was kind of like at that point I had 4 interviews, hadn't really heard back from anyone, so I was just trying to follow up and see what was happening. I emailed them. I said, just wanted to know, it's been a couple of weeks, what's the result? And they said, "Oh, we want to hire you and we want you to start at the end of March." So I mean, at that time, I was just hoping and praying and working on my paperwork, getting the documents, and they were able to process my certificate of eligibility, which is kind of the first step to getting a visa. And then, like, I got that, and um, the visa started being processed shortly after that. They started processing visas. So I applied for my visa at the very beginning of March. It was very, very tight schedule because they wanted me to start work on March 25th. And I was, borders opened at the beginning of March, I believe. So I submitted my application. It took about a week to process at the embassy near me, which I don't live close to a embassy or consulate of Japan in the US. So I applied to the one that was closest, which was not within driving distance. I had to apply by mail, which made me really nervous because I was mailing my passport and I was scared it was going to get lost in the mail. But it turned out okay. It took about a week. They were really nice. There was actually a mistake on one of the papers that my company gave me, which, yeah, the company told me there was a mistake on the paper, but they were like, just submit it anyway and write a note or tell them that there's a mistake and see if it's okay. So I tried doing that. I wrote a note saying, "Oh, there's like basically there was a special form that you had to do because it was COVID, and it included an address that you would be staying at. So the company had just put an address of some random hotel and had said that that was going to be where I was staying, just to put that. But they put the wrong address. They messed up one of the numbers in the address. So I told this to the embassy, and they were like, under normal circumstances, we would mail everything back and make you start over. But since it's just this one little thing, and we're gonna say just email us the corrected form, because it was like like a digital form. So they were like, email us the corrected one and we will continue processing it. So I was like, thank God. I told my company, and thankfully they actually responded in a timely manner, which is something I'll get to. But they responded. They said, okay, we'll send you the new one, and it was okay. So I get my visa. I arrived in Japan March 20th. So the thing is, prior to that, I did not really know where I was going, which is pretty common with these ALT companies. Um, I found out about my placement maybe 3 or 4 days before I was going to come to Japan. At that point, I had my visa, I had booked my ticket, I had, made the plans, and I decided I would come a few days early. I didn't want to arrive on the day that I start working or the day before. I wanted to have a few days. And the other thing is, I wasn't sure where I was going to get placed. I had applied to be placed in either Saitama or Tochigi because those were the only options. They didn't have options for a position in Tokyo, which is what I would have wanted because my fiance lives in Tokyo. So I was like, Saitama and Tochigi are close enough, but I told them I prefer Saitama because it's closer. So I decided I would book a hotel for those first 4 nights in Tokyo, and I would just hang out and chill there. And then whatever happened, I would figure out where I was going by the time, I needed to start work. So a couple of days before I was set to leave, they told me that they had placed me in Oyama, Tochigi. I had never heard of this place. I looked it up and they were like, oh, don't worry, it's not that far from Tokyo. I look it up. It's about an hour and a half train ride from Tokyo. Which I'm like, I guess that's okay. I don't know. I mean, I can't argue. I can't really do anything. Like, I'm about to leave. I'm whatever. So I fly over to Japan without any issues. It goes pretty smoothly at the airport, no issues there. I enjoy my first 5 days in Tokyo with Sanjay, and then I moved to Oyama. So Joy Talk gives you the option to either find your own apartment or to go into the housing that they will choose for you, which will be fully furnished. And if you go into the housing they choose, they just deduct your rent and also the initial costs for getting the apartment out of your paycheck every month. And this is really a key point for me because when you move to a new apartment in Japan, there's a lot of additional fees. It's not just like a deposit, like a 1 month deposit. There's a bunch of other fees that come along with moving that you kind of have to pay. So it costs maybe 3 or 4 times the actual cost of the apartment, like the rent. You have to be prepared to pay when you move. So I had some money saved up. I came here with about $7,000 saved up from working in the US for 8 months. Well, actually, I was only working for 3 months when I was in the US. But yeah, for 3 months, I just worked and saved money. So I came here with $7,000 saved up. But I did not want to spend all of that moving into an apartment in Oyama where I did not want to live. I knew I was not going to stay in Oyama, right? I knew the whole time. I was thinking, in 1 year I'm moving to Tokyo. I don't know what I have to do that, but I'm going to move to Tokyo next year. So I came with that mindset, and I did not want to go through the effort of trying to find an apartment in this place. I was like, just find me a place. So they found me a place. It was a Leo Palace. Leo Palace, if you don't know anything about them, they are kind of notorious for being small, for being, these cramped little, like, single apartments, very bare bones. They're known for having really bad Wi-Fi. They're known for having cockroaches, all that great stuff. That's where I lived. But whatever, I had a place to live. I didn't have to do anything for it. It was fine. That was okay. So the first day that I arrived in Oyama, coming from Tokyo, I took the Shinkansen because that's the one kind of highlight about Oyama is it's really easy to access from Tokyo because you can take either the local train, it goes all the way, like one line, just straight shot to Tokyo, Ueno, Shibuya, Ikebukuro, Shinjuku stations. All of these stations you can access with just one train. So that's really awesome. Or you can take the Shinkansen from Tokyo or Ueno Station to Oyama Station and vice versa. So the thing about the Shinkansen is it costs 3,600 yen one way. So it's a bit expensive to do that all the time if you had to go every weekend like I did. But for the first day, I was like, I'm just going to take the Shinkansen. It's a little bit faster. Let's do this. So I took the Shinkansen. I arrived at Oyama Station. Joy Talk staff were there to pick me up in a car. which I did not have all of my bags. I decided to ship my big suitcases from my hotel to my apartment, which is a fun thing you can do in Japan. But for just I had just with like a big duffel bag with me, so I didn't want to haul that because it turns out I lived a 23-minute walk from the train station. So I was not hyped to do that. So thankfully they picked me up with the car. They took me grocery shopping. They took me to this really huge grocery store, which apparently has the lowest prices in the area. And I could pick out some groceries. They took me to buy like the essentials. They took me to Nitori to buy like some bedding because like the place was furnished, so I didn't have to buy furniture or anything, but I had to get my own bedding. I had to get, you know, plates, pots, pans, that kind of thing. So they took me shopping for all of that. And you know, there was no like rush. They were just like the whole day was just me shopping for whatever I needed, and they were like, take your time, you know, whatever you need. And they're like suggesting, oh, you need this, you need that. This was with the coordinators. Most of the coordinators are very nice people. I've had some issues with some of the coordinators, which I'll get into later, but um most of them were pretty okay people. So that was day one. So training was like 5 days, I believe, all online. It was extremely boring. It was not particularly, I mean, I guess some of it was useful. I don't know. I found out that I was going to be at a junior high school. I had one school. Some people have multiple schools that they go to throughout the week. I just had one school and it was a junior high school, which turned out to be really good for me because it's not that I don't like children, but I don't really want to work with small children. I don't particularly like having to deal with little kids for long periods of time. They're nice in small doses, but I I don't want to spend 8 hours a day wrangling children. So it was great that I got put at a junior high school because this was not something that I actually specified or anything. I don't think like in my interview, but I just got really lucky on that. But a lot of the information was focused on elementary school because arguably you do a lot more work if you work in an elementary school. You do a lot of lesson planning and you do a lot of like having to create games and stuff all the time. It's not like that in junior high school. I can just tell you that right now. But we did the training. It was boring, but for some reason I have this weird thing where I really like doing training for jobs. I may not like the actual job, but for whatever reason, I love doing training for a job. So training was okay. Yeah, just Zoom, breakout rooms, that whole fun stuff. And then beginning of April is the beginning of work. So they said normally they would take you to the school before you start and introduce you, but because of COVID, they weren't doing that. So the first day that I saw my school was my first day of work. Well, they did drive me. A coordinator did drive me past the school just so I could see where I was going. So I knew, you know, what to aim for on day one, but like I didn't go inside. I didn't meet anyone until first day of work. So when I came to the school, the principal met me at the door. She introduced herself. She said that she's the principal. And then they took me inside and I had two Japanese teachers of English, JTEs, that I would work with. And one of them was kind of the main person that was in charge of me. She had been at the school for 3 years. She was very young. Both of my JTs were very young. The other guy, it was his first year teaching. Um, but the kind of main JTE, she showed me my desk, which was right next to hers. You know, she kind of gave me a rundown of this is the school, and I don't, did we have class on that first day? I can't even remember at this point. I don't think that we had class. I think it was just like entrance ceremony kind of thing, or like not entrance ceremony, like beginning ceremony kind of thing. Like I don't remember having to do a lot. So I think I kind of walked around by myself and explored the school, which I was at a very small school, and I kind of got the gist of where the classrooms were. And I kind of had to figure out how to read my schedule and how to do that just by myself, just kind of quickly processing, okay, this is showing me which room I need to go to. okay, let me go see where the rooms are. You know, all this, I just quickly figured that out, and I was ready for my first class. So my JTs never really explained any kind of expectations for me as far as I can remember, or like how class was going to go, any kind of flow, any kind of idea. I had no idea for any of that, like what it was going to be. I just had to just show up and do it, and that's how the entire year went. I just showed up to class, and at the beginning of class, they would say, "Oh, we want you to do this or that. Today, we're gonna like do this kind of small talk topic." Occasionally, they would come up and say, "Can you make an activity? Can you make a PowerPoint for this in advance?" They would tell me like a day in advance or so. But generally speaking, I had no plan. I had no idea what I was doing before class. Actually, before the first day, the only thing they told me was to make a PowerPoint about my hometown and about myself. So I did that. But I mean, that's pretty easy. It takes 2 seconds. It was just pictures, and I just talked in very simple sentences about, just on the fly. I'm from the United States. I'm from Georgia. We have peaches in Georgia, that kind of thing. So yeah, like I said, junior high school is very different from elementary school. Elementary school, you do not have a JTE. You work with the homeroom teachers who may or may not speak any English. And if they don't speak English, you plan the majority of the lessons by yourself because they don't know what to do for it, right? So you are in charge of managing the class, not managing the class, or maybe, but like for designing the class, basically. And then they're just kind of there observing, and they help with the actual class management, yes, but like they don't really do anything for the actual teaching, right? It's kind of up to you a lot of the times. But junior high school is not like that. JTEs studied English in college. They are fluent in English, or they should be. So sometimes they will try to make you do stuff, and some JTEs don't want to work or whatever. But my JTs were very, very hands-on. They had their picture for how they wanted class to go. So they did all of the lesson planning. They did all of the preparation. And what that means is if I had a full day of classes, so Joy Talk requires you to have one class period as a break every day because lunch is not considered a break with them because you're supposed to eat lunch with the students. Now, or at least when I was working there, because of COVID, we were not eating lunch with the students as ALTs. Only their homeroom teachers would eat lunch with them. And then the rest of us, like support teachers and like the principal and the vice principal, we all ate lunch in the teacher's room. But ordinarily, we would eat lunch with the students. So lunch is not considered a break, fun fact. So we are required to have another 45-minute break, which is just scheduled as a class period, at least in my experience, where we are not allowed to be scheduled for a class. And that can be any time of the day, and it's different every day, but it can't be first or sixth period. It has to be, somewhere more in the middle of the day. That means that the most class periods I could have during a day was 5, because one period is a break. So usually on Monday, I would have 5 classes. The rest of the week, I would have maybe 4, 3, or 2. So if I wasn't in class, then I was doing nothing, honestly, truthfully. And in the beginning, I tried really hard not to use my phone because I was sitting in the teacher's office. The principal's right there. So I'm trying to I would try to read articles on my tablet because I was given a tablet by the school, and I would just read the news or try to find some information, but it was boring. It was like those days when I had 2 classes were absolutely brutal. And gradually over time, I just started going on my phone, and I started bringing my phone charger because in the beginning I would go on my phone and I would be sitting for so long that my phone would be dead by the time I went home. So I started bringing my phone charger so I could just be on my phone all day, because if I wasn't in class, what else was I supposed to do? And the other thing is, in class, Sometimes it's very hands-on. So my main role was always going to be small talk at the beginning of class. I talk a little bit with the JT just freely about some topic. It might be like what summer food I like. You know, it might be my favorite season. Do I like the city or the country? That kind of thing. So we free talk, and then we would do one of my JTEs like to have the students talk a lot, especially towards the end of the year. So after, in the second half of the year, she would have them talk for maybe half the class actually. Just conversation and rotating with different partners. So something I had to do a lot of the times was if there's an uneven number of students in the class and someone doesn't have a partner, I would step in and be the partner. So, I would sit there for, half the class alternating with different students, and we're just doing the free talk, over and over again. What food do you like? We're talking for 1 minute and then change, and, like that. So that was pretty good, and that kept me, busy, and I really liked talking to the kids, honestly. Like, the students were really sweet. I liked my school. I was really surprised by how well behaved the majority of the students were, because when I think of middle school in the US, I do not think of particularly good behavior. But at my school, most of the kids were pretty well behaved. We had a couple of problem students, but even then, they were not really like that bad compared to like bad kids in the US, I feel like. So I was pretty happy, and like I liked talking to the students, and the students, some of the students really liked me, even though I do not consider myself to have much of like a teacher personality or like a kid kind of personality. Like I'm not really like just, there's this expectation for a lot of the teachers, and especially for elementary school, which is why I was really glad that I didn't go to elementary school. You're like super like high energy and like over the top all the time, and I'm very, very low key, and I try to be upbeat, of course, for the kids, but like I don't really act super special or have this crazy persona. But some of the kids really like got attached to me, in spite of this fact. So I really and actually I had one class of second grade junior high school, and these four girls would come up and talk to me, and I would always talk about, like, on Monday I would talk about what I did over the weekend, and these girls would come up and say, I would talk about like, oh, I went to this place with my boyfriend, and they would always be like, oh, did you go to your boyfriend's house? Oh, I want a boyfriend. I was talking to this boy at my juku, and like all this stuff. Every week they would come and talk to me, and they loved talking about boys, and it was so funny. And it was like they really like kind of, like looked up to me in that way. And the other thing is the students thought that I was really cute. So obviously I didn't dress like this. But I did wear, I started to wear a lot of pink shirts, or like I had this kind of like pastel rainbow sweater that I would wear. So that kind of thing, the kids thought that I was like super cute. They thought I was like the adorable teacher, and they really liked me just because I did that. So that was kind of something I did that was like memorable for the students.